Story number 1. Gateway to Hell, Bobby Mackey's Music World. My name is David, and a few months ago, my life unraveled in ways I never imagined. I had just ended a long-term relationship with my girlfriend, Emily. The breakup hit me like a ton of bricks, sudden, unexpected, and unbearably painful. Nights became endless, filled with sleeplessness and a gnawing sense of emptiness. Friends tried to help, but nothing seemed to fill the void Emily left behind. One evening, as I sat alone in my dimly lit apartment, nursing a glass of whiskey, my friend Mike walked in, a concerned look etched on his face. "You need to get out of the house, David. Come with me to Bobby Mackey's Music World. It's a great place to drown your sorrows with some live country music." I had heard of Bobby Mackey's Music World before, a popular bar and nightclub in Wilder, Kentucky, known for its lively country tunes and energetic crowds. But there was something more to the place, something that locals whispered about in hushed tones. Legends spoke of strange occurrences and eerie phenomena that seemed to linger in the shadows of its vibrant atmosphere. But my desperation clouded my judgment. I agreed to go, hoping that a night of music and dancing could help me forget my heartbreak. The drive to Wilder was uneventful, but as I approached Bobby Mackey's Music World, an uneasy feeling settled over me. The building stood tall and imposing, its neon sign flickering intermittently, casting an eerie glow on the surrounding area. The entrance was grand, with large glass doors and a spacious patio that overflowed with patrons laughing and enjoying themselves. As we entered, the warmth of the bar enveloped me. The sound of a live band playing upbeat country music filled the air, blending with the chatter and clinking of glasses. The interior was a mix of modern decor and vintage touches, creating a nostalgic yet inviting ambience. However, despite the lively atmosphere, an undercurrent of something unsettling seemed to permeate the space. We made our way to the bar, and I noticed a large, ornate mirror hanging behind the counter. Its wooden frame was intricately carved with elaborate designs, giving it an almost antique feel. The mirror reflected the bustling scene, but there was something odd about it. Shadows seemed to linger longer than they should, and the reflections occasionally flickered in ways that didn't align with reality. As I ordered a drink, an elderly bartender approached, his graying hair slicked back and his face weathered with years of service. He offered a warm smile, but his eyes held a depth of sorrow that seemed out of place in such a lively setting. "Welcome to Bobby Mackey's, son. Enjoy your night, but be careful if you decide to take a look down to the basement." His warning sent a chill down my spine. The basement? I hadn't noticed any obvious entrance to the lower level. Curious yet dismissive, I decided to focus on the present, trying to shake off the unease. The night had just begun, and I was determined to let the music drown out my pain. Despite my initial attempts to immerse myself in the music and forget my troubles, the unsettling feeling only intensified as the night progressed. I couldn't shake the sense that I was being watched. Every time I glanced around, my eyes met the cold, empty stare of someone, or something, lurking just beyond my vision. Mike, noticing my discomfort, tried to lighten the mood. "Come on, man, don't let it get to you. Let's dance." I forced a smile and joined him on the dance floor, swaying to the rhythm of the band. The music was infectious, and for a moment, I felt the weight of my heartbreak lift. But as I moved, I couldn't ignore the lingering shadows that seemed to cling to the edges of my vision. My peripheral vision caught fleeting glimpses of a woman in a flowing white dress standing near the mirror, her eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. When I turned to confront her, there was no one there. The dance floor remained filled with people, laughing and enjoying themselves, yet the woman in white was nowhere to be found. Shaking off the eerie encounter, I returned to my seat, only to find that the mirror behind the bar was showing something I couldn't quite explain. In the reflection, the woman in white stood beside me, her hand outstretched as if trying to communicate. But when I turned to look directly at her, she was gone. The only trace of her presence was the faint scent of lavender that seemed to waft through the air, leaving me with an inexplicable sense of sadness and longing. As the night wore on, the strange occurrences became more frequent. I heard my name whispered softly from the direction of the mirror, though no one around me knew me. Each time I glanced at the glass, the woman in white would appear again, her expression pleading. It was as if the mirror was trying to reach out to me, drawing me into its depths. Mike, oblivious to the supernatural elements at play, suggested we take a break and grab another drink. As we walked back to the bar, I noticed a man in a classic three-piece suit sitting alone at a corner table. His presence was unsettling, his eyes hollow, and his demeanor lifeless. He didn't interact with anyone, merely staring blankly into his glass. I approached him cautiously, feeling a strange pull toward his empty gaze. "Hey, are you all right?" I asked. He didn't respond, but his eyes seemed to bore into my soul, filling me with a sense of dread. I backed away, unnerved by his silent intensity. Returning to my seat, I couldn't help but feel that Bobby Mackey's music world was more than just a lively bar. It was a place where the past and present collided in the most unsettling ways. Determined to uncover the truth behind the mirror's strange behavior, I decided to stay until closing time, hoping that the night's events would provide some answers. Little did I know, the true horrors of Bobby Mackey's were yet to unfold. The clock ticked closer to midnight, and the crowd began to thin as the night wore on. The music softened, and the chatter became quieter, leaving the bar cloaked in an almost oppressive silence. I felt a growing sense of urgency to understand what was happening, but the fear held me back from taking any decisive action. As I sat alone, the atmosphere grew heavier, the air thick with an unspoken tension. The mirror behind the bar seemed to dominate the room, its presence more menacing with each passing minute. The woman in white appeared once again, her hand still outstretched, her eyes filled with sorrow. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging the bar into darkness for a brief moment before they returned to their dim, steady glow. In that instant of darkness, I heard a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the room, freezing the blood in my veins. The patrons around me gasped and looked around in confusion, but no one else seemed to hear the scream. My heart pounded as the mirror began to ripple, the surface distorting like liquid glass. The woman in white stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. I felt an invisible force pulling me toward the mirror, my feet moving against my will. Desperate to break free, I struggled, but the pull only intensified, dragging me closer to the glass. "Help me," she whispered, her voice a haunting melody that resonated deep within me. "Join me." Panic surged through me as I tried to resist, but my body refused to obey. The reflection of the woman in white began to change, her face morphing into a twisted, tormented visage. Her eyes hollowed further, and her mouth twisted into a grotesque smile that sent shivers down my spine. As I reached out to touch the mirror, the surface rippled violently, and the room seemed to warp around me. The walls closed in, and the air grew frigid, making it difficult to breathe. I could hear the sound of chains rattling and the distant cries of tortured souls, their anguish palpable in the oppressive darkness. Suddenly, the mirror shattered with a deafening crash, sending shards of glass flying in all directions. The room erupted into chaos as the spirits within the mirror were unleashed, their vengeful presence overwhelming the bar. Patrons screamed and scrambled to escape, but the exit seemed to disappear, trapping us all inside a nightmarish reality. The woman in white floated toward me, her form flickering and unstable. "Stay with us," she urged, her voice now filled with desperation and rage. "We need you." Before I could react, dark shadows began to creep out from the shattered mirror, their forms shifting and contorting as they reached for me with ethereal hands. I felt an icy grip on my shoulders, pulling me toward the abyss below. The ground beneath me seemed to dissolve, and I was plunged into darkness, the screams and whispers fading into an all-consuming void. When I regained consciousness, I was lying on the cold, damp floor of the basement. My head throbbed with pain, and my body ached from the ordeal. The basement was dimly lit, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay. At the center of the room was a deep pit, its edges jagged and treacherous, the remnants of the slaughterhouse's dark past still evident. Struggling to my feet, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread as I looked around. The basement was eerily quiet, the only sound being the distant dripping of water echoing through the space. Memories of the night before flashed through my mind, the haunting presence of the woman in white, the vengeful spirits, and the terrifying pull of the mirror. Determined to escape, I made my way toward the exit, but as I approached the stairs, a cold hand grasped my shoulder, sending a jolt of fear through me. I spun around to see the woman in white standing before me, her face now contorted into a grotesque smile. Her eyes were empty voids, and her presence radiated malevolence. "Stay with us," she whispered once more, her voice echoing in the confined space. "We need your pain." Summoning every ounce of strength, I pushed her away, stumbling toward the stairs. The basement seemed to stretch endlessly, the walls closing in as I ran, desperate to find a way out. Just as my hope began to wane, I reached the top of the stairs and burst into the main bar, gasping for breath. The bar was silent, the remnants of the night's terror lingering in the air. Patrons lay scattered on the floor, unconscious or in shock, their faces twisted in expressions of fear and pain. The bartender, Jack, stood motionless behind the counter, his eyes vacant and haunted. "Jack," I called out, my voice trembling. "What happened here?" He turned slowly, his face pale and eyes wide with horror. "You were dragged into the basement," he said in a barely audible voice. You escaped, but not everyone did." Before I could respond, the room began to spin, and the oppressive atmosphere returned. The mirror behind the bar shimmered once more, the shadows creeping back into the room. The woman in white reappeared, her presence more powerful and threatening than ever. "Leave now," she commanded, her voice filled with anger and sorrow. "Or join us in our eternal pain." Desperate to break free, I grabbed Jack's arm, trying to pull him toward the exit. But the shadows around us surged forward, their ghostly hands reaching for us with unrelenting force. The air grew thick with the screams and whispers of the damned, their anguish echoing through the room. In a last-ditch effort, I swung my arm at the mirror, shattering it into 1,000 pieces. The sound of breaking glass was deafening, and for a moment, everything went silent. The shadows recoiled, their grip loosening as the spirits within the mirror were released once more. Panting and drenched in sweat, I glanced around to see the bar returning to its previous state. The patrons began to stir, confused and disoriented, as if waking from a deep slumber. Jack looked at me with a mixture of fear and relief. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice shaky. I nodded, still trying to process what had just happened. "I think so. But we need to get out of here." As we made our way toward the exit, the lingering presence of the spirits seemed to fade, the oppressive energy dissipating with the shattered mirror. We stepped outside into the cool night air, the neon sign of Bobby Mackey's Music World casting an eerie glow on the deserted street. Breathing heavily, I looked back at the bar, its facade now seemingly ordinary. But deep down, I knew that the horrors we had faced were far from over. The broken mirror had only momentarily subdued the restless spirits, their anguish and rage still lingering in the shadows of Bobby Mackey's Music World. Weeks passed since that terrifying night at Bobby Mackey's Music World, but the memories continued to haunt me. I tried to move on, immersing myself in work and attempting to rebuild my shattered heart. However, the sense of being watched never truly left me, and the whispers of the past echoed in my mind. Jack and I decided to keep the broken pieces of the mirror locked away, hoping that it would prevent any further supernatural disturbances. But despite our efforts, the legends surrounding Bobby Mackey's only grew stronger. Stories of Johanna's sorrow and Alonzo's vengeance became a staple among the patrons, each recounting their own eerie experiences. One particularly cold night, I found myself standing outside Bobby Mackey's, the memories of that fateful evening resurfacing. The neon sign flickered, casting unsettling shadows on the pavement. Despite the warnings and the horrors I had faced, a part of me couldn't resist the pull of the mysterious bar. Summoning my courage, I pushed open the door and stepped inside, the familiar sounds of live music and laughter filling the space. The bar was almost empty, the few patrons present unaware of the dark history that enveloped the establishment. As I approached the bar, I caught a glimpse of the newly restored mirror behind the counter, its surface smooth and pristine. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and the air grew thick with an invisible presence. The shadows seemed to lengthen, and the whispers of the past began to resurface, filling the room with their mournful echoes. The woman in white appeared once more, her eyes filled with an eternal sadness. "You shouldn't have come back," she whispered, her voice a haunting melody that sent shivers down my spine. "We are still here." Before I could react, the shadows surged forward, their ghostly hands reaching for me with an unyielding grip. The oppressive energy threatened to pull me back into the abyss, but I fought against it, determined not to succumb to the same fate as so many others. With a surge of adrenaline, I turned and fled, the sounds of the spirit's anguish echoing behind me. As I reached the exit, I glanced back one last time to see the woman in white fading into the shadows, her presence a lingering reminder of the horrors that lay within Bobby Mackey's Music World. Panting and drenched in sweat, I stepped outside into the cool night air once more, the neon sign flickering ominously above me. The night had come full circle, and the unresolved mysteries of Bobby Mackey's music world continued to haunt me, a testament to the thin veil between the living and the dead. As I drove away, I couldn't help but wonder if the spirits of Johanna and Alonzo would forever be bound to the cursed mirror, their souls trapped in an eternal cycle of sorrow and vengeance. The legend of Bobby Mackey's music world remained an enigma, a place where the past and present collided in the most terrifying of ways, leaving those who dared to enter with stories that blurred the lines between reality and the supernatural. So, do you dare to step into Bobby Mackey's music world? Enjoy the music, revel in the nightlife, but remember that some places carry the weight of history in every corner, waiting for the next curious soul to uncover their dark secrets. Story number 2. Ghosts of the Stanley, a haunting at the Stanley Hotel. My name is Mark, and sometimes, when the nights grow long and memories sharper, I find myself recounting the events that forever changed my perception of reality. It all began shortly after Emily and I decided to take a much-needed vacation to Colorado. After years of navigating the tumultuous waters of our relationship, we thought a getaway would help us reconnect. Little did we know, our stay at the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park would plunge us into a nightmare we couldn't have imagined. Emily had always been fascinated by horror novels, especially Stephen King's The Shining. Her love for the macabre often led us to visit places steeped in history and mystery. When she suggested the Stanley Hotel, a historic landmark renowned for its stunning architecture and reported hauntings, I hesitated. My skepticism about ghosts and supernatural phenomena made me reluctant, but Emily's enthusiasm was infectious. Reluctantly, I agreed, hoping the change of scenery would lift our spirits. The Stanley Hotel greeted us with its grand facade, a perfect blend of Victorian elegance and rustic charm. Nestled in the Rocky Mountains, the hotel exuded an old-world charm, with its sweeping balconies and intricate woodwork. As we checked in, the receptionist handed us our keys with a knowing smile. "Enjoy your stay," she said, her eyes lingering a moment too long, as if she held secrets she couldn't share. That evening, Emily and I decided to explore the hotel's famous Chew-An bar, aptly named the Haunted Hall. As we stepped inside, the ambience struck us immediately. Warm lighting cast a soft glow over dark wooden tables, and the rich aroma of aged whiskey mingled with the faint scent of cigar smoke. The bar was elegantly decorated with vintage memorabilia, from old photographs to antique glassware, creating a cozy yet mysterious atmosphere. Behind the counter hung a large, ornate mirror, its frame intricately carved with patterns that seemed to tell a story of their own. The bartender, an elderly man with silver hair and piercing blue eyes, greeted us warmly. "Welcome to the Haunted Hall. What can I get you?" His voice was smooth, yet there was an underlying tension that made me uneasy. As I ordered a drink, Emily couldn't help but gaze at the mirror. "This place is incredible," she whispered, her eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight. "I can almost feel the history here." I nodded, trying to shake off the creeping sense of dread that had settled in the pit of my stomach. The Stanley Hotel had always been known for its ghost stories, but I had never believed them until now. As the night progressed, our initial excitement began to wane, replaced by an unsettling feeling that something was amiss. Emily, ever the enthusiast, suggested we delve deeper into the hotel's history. "They say F.O. Stanley himself still roams these halls, watching over his beloved hotel," she mused, eyes sparkling with intrigue. I forced a smile, dismissing her enthusiasm. "Yeah, right. Probably just stories to keep tourists entertained." But Emily wasn't so easily deterred. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Have you heard about the Haunted Hall's mirror? They say if you stare into it long enough, you can see things that aren't there, ghostly apparitions, whispers from the past." I glanced at the mirror, feeling a chill run down my spine. The reflections seemed almost too real, too vivid. The lights flickered momentarily, and for a split second, I thought I saw a shadowy figure standing just behind us. I turned to Emily, but she was smiling, oblivious to my unease. As the night wore on, the first signs of the supernatural began to manifest. Emily, sipping her cocktail, suddenly froze, her eyes fixed on the mirror. "Mark, do you see that?" she whispered, pointing to a figure that seemed to shimmer in the reflection. I followed her gaze but saw nothing out of the ordinary. "What are you talking about?" I asked, trying to mask my growing apprehension. "Look again," she insisted, her voice trembling. As I turned back to the mirror, I saw it too, a woman in a flowing white dress, her face pale and eyes hollow, staring back at us. She raised a hand, pointing towards the basement with an eerie, silent plea. I swallowed hard, feeling the room grow colder. "That's just your imagination, Emily. Maybe you've had too much to drink." But Emily shook her head, her expression serious. "No, I swear I saw her." It felt like she was trying to tell us something. Just then, a gust of wind swept through the bar, extinguishing the candles and plunging us into darkness. The sound of distant footsteps echoed through the room, but no one else was there. I felt a shiver run down my spine as the temperature seemed to drop even further. The candles flickered back to life, revealing an empty bar once more. The mirror, however, remained unchanged. I couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was watching us from within its depths. The following night, curiosity gnawed at me. I decided to confront the mirror, hoping to dispel the haunting images that had plagued us. Emily was hesitant but agreed to join me, her fascination outweighing her fear. We returned to the haunted hall, the ambience unchanged but the air thick with tension. The bartender greeted us with a solemn nod, as if he already knew what was to come. "Back again, I see," he remarked quietly. Emily and I took our usual seats at the bar, the large mirror behind us reflecting the dimly lit room. I felt a surge of determination as I faced the mirror, wanting to understand the source of the eerie apparitions. "Show me what's going on," I whispered, staring into the glass. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the reflection began to shift. The woman in white reappeared, her presence more pronounced this time. She reached out towards us, her eyes filled with a sorrow that was almost tangible. "Help us," she whispered, her voice echoing in the confined space. "We are trapped." I felt an invisible force pulling me closer to the mirror, my feet moving against my will. Emily tried to pull me back, but I was frozen, unable to resist the magnetic pull of the supernatural. Suddenly, the lights dimmed further, and a cold wind swept through the bar, sending a shiver down my spine. The bartender's warning echoed in my mind. "Be careful when you look down to the basement." Ignoring his advice, I focused on the mirror, trying to make sense of the apparition's plea. The woman in white began to fade, replaced by another figure, F.O. Stanley himself. His stern expression and piercing gaze were unsettling, as if he was evaluating our very souls. "We must leave," Emily urged, snapping me out of my trance. But the mirror's pull was too strong. I felt myself being drawn deeper into the glass, the room around me distorting and warping. Desperation surged through me as I struggled to break free, but the spirits within the mirror held me captive. The bar seemed to disappear, replaced by an endless void filled with the tormented souls of the past. Their whispers became louder, merging into a cacophony of pain and sorrow that threatened to engulf me. "Stay with us," the voices pleaded, their anguish impossible to ignore. "Join us in our eternal torment." With every ounce of strength, I willed myself to look away, breaking the unholy connection that bound me to the mirror. The reflection shattered, the glass splintering into 1,000 pieces that rained down like icy daggers. The void receded, and I found myself back in the haunted hall, gasping for breath. Emily was beside me, her eyes wide with fear. "We need to get out of here," she whispered urgently. But as we turned to leave, the room seemed to close in, the shadows growing longer and more oppressive. The bartender stood before us, his expression grave. "You've seen the truth," he said softly. "Now you must leave before it's too late." We hurried out of the haunted hall, the sounds of the shattered mirror echoing in our ears. The cool night air felt like a balm against the lingering fear, but the experience had left us shaken to our core. As we walked away from the hotel, the weight of what we had witnessed settled heavily on my shoulders. The next morning, we packed our belongings, determined to leave Ravenswood behind us. But the trauma of that night refused to fade. As we drove away, Emily noticed a faint black mark on her shirt, the remnants of the shattered mirror. "Look, Mark," she said, pointing to the stain. "It smells like smoke." I glanced at her, noticing a bruise on my own shoulder where I had been violently pulled. "We need to leave now," I insisted, my voice trembling. "This place is cursed." Our departure was anything but smooth. As we drove through the winding roads of Colorado, strange occurrences continued to plague us. The car's engine sputtered ominously, the radio crackled with distorted voices, and the air seemed to thicken with an unseen presence. When we finally reached home, we hoped the horrors of the Stanley Hotel would remain buried in the past. But the nightmares persisted, haunting our dreams with vivid images of the apparitions and the tormented souls trapped within the mirror. Months have passed since our harrowing experience at the Stanley Hotel, yet the memories linger like an unshakable shadow. Emily and I have tried to rebuild our lives, but the emotional scars remain, a constant reminder of the thin veil between our world and the supernatural. The stories of the haunted hall have only grown more elaborate, shared among locals and visitors with a mix of fear and fascination. Some claim to hear Johanna's whispers or catch a glimpse of F.O. Stanley's stern gaze in the mirror, while others report inexplicable cold spots and shadowy figures lurking in the corners. Despite our attempts to move on, the unresolved mysteries of the Stanley Hotel continue to haunt us. The broken mirror left an indelible mark on our souls, a lingering connection to the tormented spirits that still roam its halls. Emily, ever the believer in the supernatural, has become obsessed with uncovering the full extent of the hotel's haunted legacy, determined to bring peace to the restless souls trapped within. One evening, as I sat alone reflecting on the past, I noticed a faint shadow moving across my room, accompanied by the soft scent of lavender, Johanna's signature perfume. My heart raced as I realized that the curse of the Stanley Hotel had followed us home, a relentless reminder that some places hold onto their dark secrets tightly. As I look back on that night, I understand now that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. The Stanley Hotel stands as a testament to the enduring power of history and the supernatural, a place where the past and present collide in the most terrifying ways. Our experience there taught us the importance of respecting the unknown and the dangers of delving too deeply into the shadows. So, do you dare to visit the Stanley Hotel? Enjoy the beauty and history, revel in the live music, but remember that some places carry the weight of their past in every corner. Be cautious when you gaze into the haunted hall's mirror, for you never know what spirits might be watching, waiting for the next curious soul to uncover their dark secrets. Story number 3. Ghost on the Queen Mary. My name is Mark, and sometimes, when the nights stretch long and the memories sharper than they should be, I find myself recounting the events that forever altered my understanding of reality. It all began shortly after Emily and I had a fiery argument that left our relationship teetering on the brink. The fallout was swift and brutal. Emily, my anchor and confidant, decided she couldn't continue with me any longer. The pain of that breakup was a wound that refused to heal, leaving me adrift in a sea of sorrow and anger. One particularly bleak evening, as I sat alone in my dimly lit apartment, nursing a glass of whiskey, Emily's friend, Jessica, paid me a visit. Her presence was a comforting reminder that I wasn't entirely alone in my misery. "You need a change of scenery, Mark," she said, her voice gentle but insistent. "Why don't you join Emily and her friend for a night out? They're going to the Queen Mary." I sighed, staring into the amber liquid swirling in my glass. The Queen Mary? That old ship hotel? You know I'm not a fan of those ghost stories. Jessica laughed softly, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Come on, Mark. It's just a night out. Besides, Emily is really into the whole haunted hotel thing. It might help take your mind off things." Reluctantly, I agreed, hoping that the distraction would provide some respite from the relentless ache in my heart. Emily had always been fascinated by the macabre, particularly Stephen King's The Shining. Her enthusiasm for uncovering the supernatural was infectious, even if it often led me to places I'd rather avoid. But tonight, I was desperate for any semblance of normalcy. We drove to Estes Park, Colorado, the setting sun casting a golden hue over the Rocky Mountains. The Queen Mary stood majestically on the outskirts of town, its grand facade a perfect blend of Victorian elegance and rugged maritime charm. The building, once a proud ocean liner, had been transformed into a luxurious hotel, renowned not just for its beauty but also for its haunted reputation. As we approached the entrance, the atmosphere shifted. The bustling energy of the day gave way to an eerie silence, broken only by the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore. The Queen Mary loomed before us, its windows glowing softly in the twilight. The intricate carvings and ornate details hinted at a storied past, one that was steeped in both grandeur and tragedy. Emily led the way, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "This place is incredible," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "I can't wait to explore every nook and cranny." I followed, trying to push aside the unease that had begun to settle in the pit of my stomach. The lobby was a marvel of old-world craftsmanship, with marble floors, grand staircases, and chandeliers that sparkled like stars. We were greeted by the friendly receptionist, who handed us our keys with a warm smile. "Enjoy your stay," she said, her eyes lingering on us a moment too long, as if she held secrets she couldn't share. That evening, Emily and I decided to unwind by visiting the hotel's renowned Chuan bar, aptly named the Haunted Hall. As we stepped inside, the ambience struck me immediately. Warm lighting cast a soft glow over dark wooden tables, and the rich aroma of aged whiskey mingled with the faint scent of cigar smoke. The bar was elegantly decorated with vintage memorabilia, from old photographs to antique glassware, creating a cozy yet mysterious atmosphere. Behind the counter hung a large, ornate mirror, its frame intricately carved with patterns that seemed to tell a story of their own. The mirror reflected the bustling scene, but there was something oddly unsettling about it. Shadows lingered longer than they should, and the reflections occasionally flickered in ways that defied logic. As I ordered a drink, Emily couldn't help but gaze at the mirror. "This place is amazing," she whispered, her eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight. "I can almost feel the history here." I nodded, trying to shake off the creeping sense of dread that had settled in the pit of my stomach. The Queen Mary had always been known for its ghost stories, but I had never believed them until now. Despite my initial attempts to immerse myself in the music and forget my troubles, the unsettling feeling only intensified as the night progressed. Emily, ever the enthusiast, suggested we delve deeper into the hotel's history. "They say F.O. Stanley, the original owner, still roams these halls, watching over his beloved Queen Mary," she mused, eyes sparkling with intrigue. I forced a smile, dismissing her enthusiasm. "Yeah, right. Probably just stories to keep tourists entertained." But Emily wasn't so easily deterred. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Have you heard about the Haunted Hall's mirror? They say if you stare into it long enough, you can see things that aren't there, ghostly apparitions, whispers from the past." I glanced at the mirror, feeling a chill run down my spine. The reflections seemed almost too real, too vivid. The lights flickered momentarily, and for a split second, I thought I saw a shadowy figure standing just behind us. I turned to Emily, but she was smiling, oblivious to my unease. As the night wore on, the strange occurrences became more frequent. Emily, sipping her cocktail, suddenly froze, her eyes fixed on the mirror. "Mark, do you see that?" she whispered, pointing to a figure that seemed to shimmer in the reflection. I followed her gaze, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. "What are you talking about?" I asked, trying to mask my growing apprehension. "Look again," she insisted, her voice trembling. As I turned back to the mirror, I saw it too, a woman in a flowing white dress, her face pale and eyes hollow, staring back at us. She raised a hand, pointing towards the basement with an eerie, silent plea. I swallowed hard, feeling the room grow colder. "That's just your imagination, Emily. Maybe you've had too much to drink." But Emily shook her head, her expression serious. "No, I swear I saw her." It felt like she was trying to tell us something. Just then, a gust of wind swept through the bar, extinguishing the candles and plunging us into darkness. The sound of distant footsteps echoed through the room, but no one else was there. I felt a shiver run down my spine as the temperature seemed to drop even further. The candles flickered back to life, revealing an empty bar once more. The mirror, however, remained unchanged. I couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was watching us from within its depths. As the clock ticked on, the anomalies continued to escalate. The woman in white appeared intermittently, each time her presence more pronounced and her gestures more desperate. Emily began to feel a growing unease, her earlier excitement now tinged with fear. "Mark, maybe we should leave," she suggested, her voice shaky. I hesitated, torn between the desire to escape and the need to understand what was happening. Let's just take it easy tonight, I replied, hoping to reassure her. But the universe had other plans. The first sign of true supernatural activity came when I noticed a flicker in the mirror, a momentary distortion that revealed a shadowy figure standing just behind us. I turned to confront it, but the figure vanished, leaving only the lingering sense of being watched. Emily, too, began to experience strange sensations. She mentioned feeling the cold breath on her neck, though no one was standing beside her. "It's like someone's breathing down my neck," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft strains of country music playing in the background. The final straw came when a shadowy hand reached out from the mirror, pressing against its surface as if trying to break through. The room seemed to pulse with an unseen energy, the very air charged with tension and fear. Emily and I exchanged a terrified glance, both of us realizing that what we were witnessing was beyond our understanding. Desperate for answers, I approached the bartender, hoping he could shed some light on the strange occurrences. But he remained silent, his eyes distant and haunted. "There's nothing to worry about," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just enjoy your night." But as I returned to my seat, the whispers began anew, louder and more insistent this time. "Help us," they pleaded, their voices echoing through the bar. The woman in white reappeared, her eyes filled with sorrow and desperation. As midnight approached, the atmosphere within the haunted hall grew more oppressive. The lively energy of the night took on a darker tone, and the once warm and inviting space felt increasingly sinister. Emily and I sat together, our earlier fears now amplified by the relentless presence of the supernatural. Suddenly, the music screeched to an abrupt halt, and the room fell into an eerie silence. The patrons, mid-conversation and dance, froze in place as if time had come to a standstill. The only sound was the faint dripping of water from somewhere deep within the building. The temperature plummeted, and my breath became visible in the cold air. Without warning, the mirror began to ripple, the surface distorting like liquid glass. The woman in white stepped closer, her form becoming more solid, her eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. "You must help us," she whispered, her voice echoing through the now silent room. I felt an invisible force pulling me towards the mirror, my feet moving against my will. Emily tried to pull me back, but the supernatural grip was too strong. Desperate to break free, I struggled, but the pull only intensified, dragging me closer to the glass. Suddenly, a deep, resonant voice filled the room, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. "Xuan bar nai kong chao don and hung kuthulong tun trong," it intoned, the words a chilling decree that reverberated through every corner of the room. The language was unfamiliar, yet the meaning was clear, a warning and a threat all in one. The mirror's surface began to shimmer violently, the woman in white morphing into a grotesque figure of suffering and rage. The whispers escalated into a cacophony of tormented souls, their collective anguish almost unbearable. I could feel their pain seeping into my very being, their desperation merging with my own fear. In a last-ditch effort to save myself and Emily, I swung my arm at the mirror, shattering the illusion for a moment. The glass cracked, sending spiderweb patterns across its surface, and the whispers halted abruptly. I gasped, stumbling back, my heart racing as I tried to regain my composure. But the momentary respite was short-lived. The mirror began to rumble, the cracks widening as if something was trying to break free. The figure in the mirror morphed into a monstrous entity, its form shifting and contorting with each passing second. The air grew thick with the scent of decay, and the oppressive energy reached a fever pitch. "You cannot escape," the voice boomed, the words now clear and menacing. "Stay with us, or suffer the same fate." The shadows in the room surged forward, their ghostly hands reaching for me and Emily with an unrelenting force. I felt my body being pulled towards the abyss below, my legs turning to jelly as the darkness threatened to consume me. Panic surged through me as I realized that escape was no longer an option. I was trapped, ensnared by the malevolent spirits that haunted the Queen Mary. Emily screamed, her voice breaking through the chaos as she attempted to pull me back. "Mark, fight it. We need to get out of here." Summoning every ounce of strength, I willed myself to resist the supernatural pull, my mind screaming for escape. The entity in the mirror loomed over us, its presence a suffocating force that made breathing difficult. The whispers of the damned swirled around us, their voices merging into a single, deafening roar of anguish and desperation. In a final, desperate move, I grabbed Emily's hand and pulled her toward the exit, the shadows clawing at our backs as we fled the bar. The sound of the mirror shattering echoed in my ears, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted as we broke free from the supernatural grip of the Queen Mary. When I finally burst out of the Queen Mary's Chew-End bar, the cool night air felt like a lifeline, the tension and fear momentarily lifting as we ran into the safety of the parking lot. Emily and I didn't stop until we were far away from the haunted ship, our breaths coming in ragged gasps, our hearts pounding in our chests. As we sat in silence, trying to process the horrors we had just endured, Emily broke the stillness. "I'm so sorry, Mark. I didn't mean for this to happen." I reached out, taking her hand in mine. "It's not your fault. We need to make sure this never happens again." We drove away from the Queen Mary as fast as we could, the haunted ship fading into the distance behind us. But the nightmares didn't end there. The following days were plagued by sleepless nights and recurring dreams of the woman in white and the vengeful spirits that haunted the Chew-End bar. When we returned to our lives, we decided to keep the experience to ourselves, fearing that no one would believe the terrifying events we had witnessed. But the evidence was undeniable. As I unpacked my bags, I noticed a faint, charred mark on my shoulder, where I had been violently pulled towards the mirror. Emily found a lingering scent of cigar smoke on her clothes, the same scent that filled the Chew-End bar during our ordeal. Our relationship, already strained by the breakup, grew even more distant as the horrors we faced took their toll. Emily became increasingly withdrawn, her love for horror novels now mingled with a deep-seated fear of the supernatural. Mark, on the other hand, found himself questioning his skepticism, the events at the Queen Mary forcing him to confront the reality of the paranormal. Despite our attempts to move on, the hauntings persisted. Emily would often hear soft whispers in the dead of night, her name called out in haunting echoes. I, too, felt the lingering presence of the spirits, their sorrow and anger etched into my very soul. It was clear that the ghosts of the Queen Mary had left an indelible mark on us, a reminder that some places hold onto their dark secrets with an unyielding grip. As weeks turned into months, our once vibrant relationship withered under the weight of our shared trauma. The Queen Mary became a symbol of the unresolved pain and the supernatural forces that had intertwined with our lives. We both knew that the horrors we faced were far from over, that the ghosts of the past would continue to haunt us until we found a way to lay them to rest. Months have passed since that harrowing night at the Queen Mary, yet the memories linger like an unshakable shadow. Emily and I have tried to rebuild our lives, but the emotional scars remain, a constant reminder of the thin veil between our world and the supernatural. The stories of the haunted hall have only grown more elaborate, shared among locals and visitors with a mix of fear and fascination. Some claim to hear Johanna's whispers or catch a glimpse of F.O. Stanley's stern gaze in the mirror, while others report inexplicable cold spots and shadowy figures lurking in the corners. Despite our attempts to move on, the unresolved mysteries of the Queen Mary continue to haunt us. The broken mirror left an indelible mark on our souls, a lingering connection to the tormented spirits that still roam its halls. Emily, ever the believer in the supernatural, has become obsessed with uncovering the full extent of the hotel's haunted legacy, determined to bring peace to the restless souls trapped within. One evening, as I sat alone reflecting on the past, I noticed a faint shadow moving across my room, accompanied by the soft scent of lavender, Johanna's signature perfume. My heart raced as I realized that the curse of the Queen Mary had followed us home, a relentless reminder that some places hold onto their dark secrets tightly. As I look back on that night, I understand now that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. The Queen Mary stands as a testament to the enduring power of history and the supernatural, a place where the past and present collide in the most terrifying of ways. Our experience there taught us the importance of respecting the unknown and the dangers of delving too deeply into the shadows. So, do you dare to visit the Queen Mary? Enjoy the beauty and history, revel in the live music, but remember that some places carry the weight of their past in every corner. Be cautious when you gaze into the haunted hall's mirror, for you never know what spirits might be watching, waiting for the next curious soul to uncover their dark secrets. Story number 4. Ghosts of the Myrtles, a haunting at the Myrtles Plantation. My name is Tom, and there are moments in life that push you to the brink, forcing you to seek solace in the most unexpected places. It was one such moment when Emily and I decided to take a break from our hectic lives and embark on a getaway to the Myrtles Plantation in Louisiana. Known for its eerie beauty and a reputation that sends shivers down the spines of even the bravest souls, the Myrtles Plantation was the perfect escape, or so we thought. Emily had always been fascinated by the supernatural. A lover of horror novels, especially Stephen King's works, she found comfort in the macabre tales that seemed to mirror her own thoughts. After a particularly grueling project at work and a heated argument that left our relationship strained, Emily suggested we visit the Myrtles Plantation to rekindle our connection and perhaps, in the process, find a way to mend our fractured bond. I was skeptical, to say the least. My rational mind dismissed ghost stories as mere folklore, but Emily's enthusiasm was infectious. We arrived at the plantation on a crisp autumn evening, the setting sun casting long shadows over the grand estate. The air was thick with the scent of magnolias, and the hauntingly beautiful architecture stood as a testament to a bygone era. The Myrtles Plantation boasted several amenities, but one place particularly caught Emily's attention, the Whispering Spirits Bar. Located in a secluded wing of the plantation, the bar was said to be the heart of many ghostly tales. Intrigued by the blend of history and mystery, we decided to spend our first night there. As we stepped inside, the atmosphere was immediately palpable. The bar was elegantly decorated with dark wood paneling, antique furnishings, and dimly lit chandeliers that cast a soft, golden glow. A large, ornate mirror dominated the wall behind the bar, its intricate frame reflecting the room in a way that seemed almost otherworldly. The gentle hum of classic jazz music played from a vintage jukebox, adding to the bar's old-world charm. We took a seat at the corner of the bar, the comforting warmth of the place a stark contrast to the chilly night air outside. Emily ordered us drinks, hers a classic martini and mine a bourbon on the rocks. As we sipped our cocktails, I couldn't help but notice the bartender's unsettlingly calm demeanor. His name tag read Henry, but there was an eerie stillness about him that set my nerves on edge. "Enjoy your evening," Henry said with a slight nod, his eyes never leaving the mirror behind him. "The spirits are quite friendly tonight." Emily chuckled nervously. "I think Henry might have a different idea of friendly." I laughed, though the comment felt forced. We both tried to focus on the music and the occasional laughter from other patrons, but the presence of the mirror seemed to dominate the room, an unspoken reminder of the plantation's haunted legacy. As the night progressed, the initial charm of the Whispering Spirits Bar began to wane, replaced by an unsettling feeling that I couldn't quite shake. Emily was engrossed in her conversation with a fellow guest, a young woman named Sarah who shared her passion for the paranormal. Meanwhile, I found myself drawn back to the mirror, unable to ignore the strange sensations it evoked. Emily suddenly pulled me back from my thoughts. "Tom, do you see that?" I glanced at her, noticing the worry etched on her face. "See what?" "Look closer at the mirror," she insisted. "There's something off about it tonight." I followed her gaze, focusing on the mirror. At first, everything seemed normal, but then I noticed a faint, shadowy figure standing behind the bartender. It was a man dressed in a vintage suit, his face pale and eyes hollow. When I looked directly at him, he vanished, leaving only the reflection of the empty bar. I felt a chill run down my spine. "Probably just a trick of the light," I muttered, though my voice lacked conviction. Emily shook her head. "No, it's something more. Do you hear that?" I strained my ears, trying to discern any sounds beyond the music. All I could hear were soft whispers, barely audible but persistent. "Whispers of what?" I asked, turning back to the mirror. Before Emily could respond, the room seemed to grow colder. My breath became visible in the dim light, and I could feel an invisible presence pressing against me. "We should leave," I suggested, though my gut told me otherwise. But Emily was already reaching for her glass, her eyes fixed on the mirror. "No, Tom. I want to see what's happening." Just then, a heavy gust of wind swept through the bar, extinguishing the candles and plunging us into darkness. The only light came from the flickering fireplace, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. The whispers grew louder, more distinct, and the once vibrant atmosphere turned oppressive. In the midst of the chaos, Henry the bartender appeared beside me, his expression unreadable. "You're not supposed to be here tonight," he said softly. "The spirits are restless." I felt a surge of panic rising within me. "What do you mean?" Henry's gaze shifted towards Emily, and I saw a flicker of something, fear, perhaps, in his eyes. This bar is a gateway. Once you see the spirits, it binds you to their world. Emily looked terrified now, her earlier curiosity replaced by sheer fear. What are you talking about? Before Henry could respond, the mirror behind him rippled like water, distorting the reflection. The shadowy man reappeared, his eyes now fixated on us with an intensity that was impossible to ignore. He began to move toward the mirror, his form becoming more solid with each step. We need to get out, I urged, grabbing Emily's hand and pulling her toward the exit. But as we moved, the door seemed to vanish, replaced by an impenetrable wall of darkness. There's no way out, Henry whispered, his voice tinged with sorrow. Once you're in, there's no escaping. The shadowy man reached the mirror, pressing his hand against the glass as if trying to break through. The whispers turned into agonized screams, and the temperature plummeted further. Emily and I were frozen in place, our eyes locked on the malevolent figure in the mirror. We must leave now, I tried to say, but my voice was barely a whisper. Just as the shadow was about to extend his hand through the glass, the mirror shattered with a deafening crash, sending shards of glass flying in all directions. The room erupted into chaos as the spirits were unleashed, their forms swirling around us in a whirlwind of sorrow and rage. Patrons screamed and scrambled to escape, but the supernatural forces held us captive. In the midst of the turmoil, I felt an invisible hand clutching my shoulder, pulling me back toward the mirror. Desperate to break free, I struggled against the force, but it only grew stronger, dragging me closer to the abyss below. Emily, run! I shouted, but my voice was drowned out by the cacophony of spirits. Emily managed to free herself, grabbing my hand and pulling me away from the mirror. Together, we fought against the invisible forces, the weight of the spirits pressing down on us. With a final, desperate effort, we broke free from their grasp and dashed toward the exit, the screams and whispers fading behind us as we fled the haunted bar. We burst out of the Myrtle's plantation, gasping for breath and drenched in sweat. The cool night air felt like a reprieve from the horrors we had just escaped. Looking back, the bar stood silent and foreboding, the broken mirror still visible through the shattered windows. We need to leave, Emily panted, her eyes wide with fear. Now. We hurried to our car, the adrenaline still coursing through our veins. As we drove away, the image of the shadowy man in the mirror lingered in my mind, his hollow eyes and desperate gaze a haunting reminder of our encounter. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following us, a lingering presence that refused to let us go. Back at our hotel, the nightmares began almost immediately. Every night, I found myself dreaming of the Whispering Spirits bar, the oppressive darkness, and the malevolent spirits that sought to trap us within their haunted realm. Emily, too, was plagued by visions of the shadowy figure and the ghostly woman in white, her once vibrant spirit now overshadowed by fear and trauma. Determined to find answers, I decided to delve into the history of the Myrtle's plantation and the Whispering Spirits bar. The plantation was infamous for its tragic past, with numerous reports of ghostly apparitions and unexplained phenomena. The bar, in particular, was the center of many supernatural tales, believed to be a gateway between the living and the dead. I spent hours poring over old records, newspaper articles, and local folklore, piecing together the dark history that surrounded the plantation. It became clear that the Whispering Spirits bar was built on the remnants of a forgotten era, a place where sorrow and anger had festered, giving rise to restless spirits seeking vengeance and connection. One night, as I sat alone in my room, staring at the mirror, a familiar chill swept through the air. The scent of cigar smoke wafted into the room, bringing with it the faint sound of jazz music. I turned to see the shadowy man from the bar standing behind me, his hollow eyes fixed on mine. "You cannot escape us," he whispered, his voice echoing in the confines of the room. "We are bound to this place, just as you are now." Fear gripped me, and I felt a surge of panic. "What do you want from us?" The man's expression softened, a sorrowful undertone beneath his malevolent presence. "We seek peace, freedom from our eternal torment. Help us, and we will release you from our grasp." Desperate and terrified, I knew that confronting the spirits was our only hope for redemption. I reached out to Emily, sharing my findings and the realization that our escape from the Myrtle's plantation was only temporary. The spirits were not just random apparitions, they were souls trapped by unresolved pain and anger, yearning for closure. Together, we decided to return to the Whispering Spirits bar, armed with knowledge and a determination to help the restless spirits find peace. We knew it was a risk, but the alternative, living under the constant threat of their haunting presence, was unbearable. Our return to the Myrtles plantation was met with an eerie stillness. The Whispering Spirits bar stood as a silent witness to our previous ordeal, its broken mirror now a haunting symbol of the night's chaos. As we stepped inside, the air was thick with anticipation, the oppressive energy a stark contrast to the lively atmosphere of the night before. Emily and I took our seats at the bar, the weight of our mission pressing down on us. The bartender, Henry, stood behind the counter, his expression somber yet resolute. "I knew you'd come back," he said quietly. "The spirits need your help." I nodded, feeling a surge of determination. "We're here to help them find peace." Henry motioned toward the mirror, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and fear. "The spirits are trapped by their own pain and unresolved emotions. If you can help them confront their past, they might find the closure they need." We approached the mirror, the air growing colder as we drew nearer. The shadowy figure of the man from the bar reappeared, his presence more commanding than ever. "You cannot help us," he declared, his voice booming through the room. "Our pain is too great, our anger too deep." But Emily stepped forward, her voice unwavering. "We can help you. Let us listen to your stories, understand your pain, and help you find peace." The spirits hesitated, their forms flickering with uncertainty. The woman in white appeared beside the shadowy man, her expression one of longing and sorrow. "How can you help us?" she whispered, her voice a haunting melody that resonated with our own pain. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "We want to understand your stories. Share your pain with us, and let us help you find the peace you seek." The spirits seemed to soften, their hostile energy giving way to a collective yearning for release. One by one, they began to share their tales of love, loss, betrayal, and unfulfilled desires. As they spoke, the oppressive atmosphere began to lift, replaced by a sense of catharsis and healing. The woman in white told of her tragic love affair, how her lover was taken from her in a fit of rage, leaving her heartbroken and seeking solace in the quiet corners of the plantation. The shadowy man revealed his own tale of vengeance, his spirit unable to find peace after a life filled with anger and regret. As the stories unfolded, Emily and I listened with empathy and compassion, offering our support and understanding. Slowly, the spirits began to dissipate, their forms growing lighter as they found the closure they so desperately needed. With each spirit that found peace, the room grew brighter, the air lighter. The oppressive energy that had once dominated the Whispering Spirits bar was replaced by a warm, comforting presence. The mirror, once a portal for torment, now reflected a scene of tranquility and harmony. Henry approached us, a look of gratitude in his eyes. "You did it. The spirits have found peace, thanks to you." We exchanged relieved smiles, knowing that our mission had been successful. But as we turned to leave, a final spirit appeared before us, a serene figure bathed in a gentle light. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. "You've given us the gift of peace." With those words, the spirit faded, leaving behind a sense of calm and closure. The Whispering Spirits bar stood silent, its dark past finally laid to rest. Months have passed since that transformative night at the Myrtles plantation, yet the memories linger like an unshakable shadow. Emily and I have both grown stronger, our relationship mended by the shared experience and the bonds we formed with the spirits we helped. The Myrtles plantation remains a beacon for those seeking history and mystery, its haunted reputation now tempered by the stories of hope and redemption. The Whispering Spirits bar stands as a testament to the enduring power of compassion and understanding, a place where restless souls found peace through the empathy of two young souls willing to listen. Yet, despite the closure we achieved, there are still whispers among the locals, tales of spirits that linger, waiting for another curious soul to uncover their stories. Emily, ever the believer, continues to explore the supernatural, driven by the desire to help others find peace as we did. I often find myself gazing at mirrors, the simple act of reflection now tinged with a deeper awareness. The experience at the Myrtles plantation taught me that some mysteries are meant to be unraveled, and that the key to overcoming our own pain often lies in understanding and compassion. But sometimes, in the quiet moments of the night, I still hear the faint whispers of the past, a gentle reminder that the line between our world and the supernatural remains as thin as ever. And I wonder, with a shiver of unease, if there are still souls out there yearning for peace, waiting for someone to listen to their stories and help them find their way home. So, if you ever find yourself at the Myrtles Plantation, enjoying a drink at the Whispering Spirits Bar, remember the stories of Emily and me. Enjoy the music, revel in the history, but be cautious when you gaze into the mirror. For you never know whose whispers might be calling out to you from beyond, seeking the understanding and compassion that could set them free.